All right, welcome back to the program. It is midweek with the mayor, just 2 hours delayed, that's all. The mayor had something to do today. I play this just for you, you know.
Casey and the Sunshine Band, huh?
Yeah, yeah.
Is that, I'm not connecting the dots. But
well,
I like Casey.
You just struck me as being a great dancer, so I could just envision you out there. You know,
yeah, of course, yeah,
yeah. So, are you a dancer? No, actually, you're not. Are you?
You know, ask my daughters that, and
okay.
You'll probably get a very blunt answer.
But do you like to dance?
I'm, you'll see me out there every once in a while.
Oh, we got to get our cameras out there.
Yeah,
yeah. We got to get some video of that.
Out of view of the press.
Folks, if we can do it, we'll get some video of this up on our Facebook page as soon as we can. So how are you?
I'm doing well.
You were gone last week looking for colleges for your daughter, I guess?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a rite of passage for me to be. We were down in the Washington, D.C. area looking at different schools for Grace, who's a junior now in high school. And so we were doing that. But in fact, when your show was scheduled, I had broken away for a meeting at the Department of Transportation to pitch our Tiger Grant application. The Tiger Grant program is an infrastructure program, and we've applied a couple of times now for funding for the North Terminal project in the northern part of the harbor, so that we can accommodate more fishing boats and more offshore wind boats and so forth. So, so duty was never far away from me on my trip with my kids to college campuses.
What's she interested in? What she want to do?
Yeah, I think she's, I think she kind of likes. I think she'd like to go into business for herself at some point. I think that if you asked her, that's at the top of the list. But I don't know about you, Barry, but for me at 16 years old, I had no idea. I'm
going to be 60, and I still have no idea what I want to be when I grow up. Problem is, I'm running out of time to decide here. So.
Yeah, who knows,
Yeah.
But, I think for the people who figure that out quickly, they tend to get on a track more quickly. But, it's a hard thing. If
no politicians in the family?
You know what? She enjoys politics, and she's, it's funny, that I've been in this job for 6 years now. It's been a big part of all of my kids' childhood, so they've grown up with it. And it's not like I come home and just talk about, that's the only thing I talk about when I sit down at the dinner table. And usually I'm sort of in listening mode, but they've been around it. They've been in campaigns, and they've seen, they're obviously, because they're in the public school system, they certainly hear lots of stuff. And, I think it's, in some ways, I think it's sort of a double-edged sword as a childhood experience. I think it's offered a certain richness and exposure to things that a lot of kids don't have the privilege to see. At the same time, they probably get a little more scrutiny than most kids do. And that's, for most kids don't welcome that, but I think by and large they've managed that pretty well.
Do they get razzed at school at all?
They don't. They haven't. And I'd always wondered whether, after I was first elected, whether that would happen. And they don't get.
Tell the old man to fix my potholes.
Yeah, they really haven't. They really haven't. My youngest one, Lauren, does get. She does get comments from other kids that are pretty crazy, like. Does your father go to school in a helicopter? Does he own City Hall? I mean, it's questions like,
well, do you?
Yeah. Turns out I don't, as you know. So, some of the questions from the younger kids are pretty funny, and and so Lauren, they all sort of roll with that, but they really, and I think it really is a credit to the community that the mayor's kids can be in the public school system and not get grief about that. They have, friends like everybody else, and they fit in, and it works really well.
Well, that's good. Well, you just a little bit more serious business. The passing this week of Arthur Moniz, well-known artist in our community.
Yeah, that's why I was late for the usual scheduled time for the show. I was at his service at the Siemens Bethel, and credit to the Bethel for putting it on for him. He certainly deserves that kind of attention. It was a lovely service for a really terrific guy, and a guy who really meant a lot to the city and Greater New Bedford more generally. He's a very valuable person for the city to have had. To, here's a guy who captured, in many ways, the essence of New Bedford, with his waterfront scenes, with the scenes of street life in New Bedford, and really, if we're at, I said to his widow Cheryl, who's another really wonderful person. Afterward, I said, if the priest at the service had asked for a show of hands of who has a work of Arthur Moniz in their homes, I'm sure every single hand would go up. He's just so familiar to everybody and was very talented, and I certainly count myself among people who have Arthur Moniz works on the walls of my house. When a city has somebody like that who celebrates those things that are really core to our identity, it's something that can connect all of us, and so he really contributed in that way so much. And he was a big fixture in the downtown. His gallery was really a cornerstone of the historic district. And I don't know what they're going to do with the shop in the long run. I'm sure a lot of people are wondering, because everyone has such an affection for that business. But he'll be missed. In addition to being a very talented artist, he's just a downright terrific guy.
No immediate plans, though.
Yeah, not to my knowledge. I mean, obviously they've got a lot to process right now.
So did John tell you I texted him earlier this week? Did you tell him? No, he didn't tell you. I texted him earlier this week.
What'd you say?
Well, I'm just kind of curious as to when the snowflakes are going to come down in the north end. You got these big Christmas snowflakes that are still lit at night. It looks like, Holly Jolly Christmas when you go down the avenue. And tomorrow's March 1st.
I took note of that myself. I'm still thinking, you know what? I figured, here's the deal. If I took the snowflakes down, it would jinx us. We would have a massive blizzard.
Is that what it is?
That is it.
Okay.
That's my excuse.
So they stay up till July, right?
That's my story, and I'm sticking with it. Yep.
I think it was about a week ago that
we're not in the clear yet. It's February 28th, Barry. So.
Yeah, I know. Tomorrow's March 1st. Yeah. 3 weeks from today is the first day of spring. So we don't want to push our luck too much.
We've had snowstorms in late March too.
We have.
So I don't want to be the cause of I don't want to be the cause of a blizzard by taking those things down.
I know it was like a week ago that the Christmas tree at Riverside Park came down. So I mean, I don't want to rush anything here, but.
Well, I think the longer we stay in the Christmas spirit, Barry, the better off we'll all be.
Right. John suggested maybe it was just early planning for 2018's Christmas. So.
We could do that. That would be more efficient. If we all left our Christmas decorations up year-round through July and August, it would be just – it would.
And when it gets real hot in August, we see those snowflakes, we'll think cool.
Yeah, so there you go.
Yeah. All right.
Why not have Christmas? Christmas is a great time of year. Why not have more of it, right?
All right. So you were talking about the Tiger grants, and a few years ago we got some nice Tiger grants to build the railroad bridges over Coggeshall and Sawyer.
Yeah, Dean. Yep.
So now we got these ugly, hideous rail cars that are sitting up there with graffiti on both sides of them. They seem to stretch for miles and miles and miles, and it's like yuck.
No, I've had my back and forth with the rail company about moving those, and railroads are have posed a problem to mayors all around the country for exactly that reason. We have very little control it's not like telling somebody to move a car off the street that has, is unregistered or blocking something. We don't have a lot of control over where those cars go. So all I can do is just, continue to prod and be the squeaky wheel, which we've done. But yeah, it looks bad, and we'll continue to work on them. This is the thing that it looks bad enough in and of itself, but we work really hard to get the graffiti down in the city, and we've done a really good job of it. Take a look at other cities that I won't name, and consider like how much graffiti is out there and compare it to New Bedford. We really have done a good job with it. And then you have this this set of freight cars sitting there that are all tagged up, and it's just, it encourages people to put more up. So, it's a drag, and there's not a lot I can.
So you've communicated with them about?
Oh yeah.
What have they said?
Mass Coastal.
They'll call us. We'll call you.
Railroad.
Yeah.
Well, I think you actually, with your microphone, have more power over that. So I appreciate your bringing that up. But Mass
that was pretty hideous when I went by there actually this week, and I said, "Wow, I'll have to ask the mayor about that this week when he's on." So, all right, so that's one that's getting worked on.
Yeah.
All right. The city council last week unanimously sent off to, I guess, your office and maybe the school department some requests about doing something to study school safety. And of course, we've had another school shooting since you were here last. And there's been a lot of discussion about a lot of it right here about finally the need to address school safety as opposed to just talking about gun control. Let's talk about making our school safer.
I mean, from intruders into the school.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there's talk about armed teachers. There's talk about armed security guards. All of these things are very, very expensive. And we talk about barely having the money to meet minimum net school spending requirements as it is. So you add more layers of security. I know Councilor Gomes was talking about panic buttons and, various other things at the schools. So what do we do? I mean, obviously, it's a concern. It's 2018. It's become a part of our life, unfortunately.
Yep.
And I guess we have to move in a direction to better protect our kids and teachers that are there, right?
Yeah, you have to. And, and it's a, we've talked about it before, but there's, it's the reality that you have to deal with. I mean, it's certainly unfortunate. Nobody would, when we were kids would even think in these terms, but it's so crazy that this stuff is happening and continues to happen. It happening so often that it almost seems routine, like, oh, there's another shooting, right? Mass shooting. And so that doesn't speak well for American society currently, but we at the local level in particular have to deal with it. The federal government can have its debates about gun control and about
mental
illness and background checks and all that stuff. And I certainly have my opinions about that, and the inability of the federal government to solve basic problems. But like a lot of other things, it falls on municipalities to deal with. Fortunately, we've been doing a lot over the last few years that has ranged from additional security measures in schools, which the detail of which I won't go into because that's just not something you want to talk about publicly, right? You don't want to let the bad guys know like what you're doing. Mm-hmm. But in general, there have been hard security measures put into place in terms of alarms and other things like that. There's been a fair amount of training, the so-called ALICE training, and I can't remember what the acronym stands for, but it has to do with reacting to active shooters. We've done that in municipal facilities. We've done it in schools. I think those trainings can't be one-off. They have to be recurring. It has to be, not quite as often as fire drills in schools. I don't think we need to go that far, but it has to be regular. And if it's annually or whatever, people need to be refreshed in their minds that this is something you need to have, ready. You have to be ready one way or the other to react. We do at a number of city schools have an armed presence in the way of the school resource officers. So at New Bedford High, for instance, there are 3 officers that are uniform officers who are permanently stationed there, and so that's obviously an important measure. We have SROs at each of our middle schools, and then there are at the elementary schools there aren't SROs, but there are folks. There are the police department, the police stations in each part of the city know where their elementary schools are. They have constant interaction with those elementary schools, and so they're sensitized to the need to be vigilant. And in addition, we're putting in some harder infrastructure. Infrastructure is probably the wrong word. Design changes in schools so that it just becomes harder to enter. I went down, for instance, to the Duval School yesterday for an event. And even the mayor shows up.
Sorry, we don't
camera.
know you.
Yeah, state who you are, right? So which is good. I'm glad they did that. I'm
Yep.
glad it wasn't, oh, come on in, mayor, or to have the door open or something. But so folks at schools are sensitized to that, and we just have to continue to train and be ready and understand where the threats may lie as far as mental illness goes. I mean, do we have a police department that is getting better all the time at understanding, at least within our own community where, dangerous people live and what they do and keep, good intelligence on them. So that's another thing that's, especially in the wake of the Douglas High School shooting, that's something that police departments have to do.
These things happen so frequently, and when they do happen for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, everybody's extra super vigilant, and then we kind of get back into our ways again. I know every school in every district people are told don't open the doors for anybody and that type of thing. But yet it happens. Somebody will always push that door open and somebody can come in. You're never expecting that the person coming in the door is going to be armed and shoot everybody up, but it happens, and we get lax again. And I guess those are the things that we need to really address, right? I mean, because
you have
that
to
type
be
of
really
security
formal. Like I was saying yesterday, my visit to Duval School, you have to be that formal in terms of letting people in. There can't be a casual interaction. Oh, I know that parent, I'll just let them in.
Right.
It's unfortunate, but you have to take those precautions, and you have to have that mindset.
Now there's a renewed discussion about arming teachers, because this isn't new. This is something that's been talked about in some circles for a long time. So now it's back out there, and because Trump suggested it, everybody thinks it's stupid. But there are a lot of people that support it. As a matter of fact, we had last week, maybe on the day that you were away, I'm not sure, I had the Buckeye Firearms Association on, and they have a program called FASTER. And they are training teachers in 12 states currently to be able to carry, to be able to provide emergency medical assistance in the event of something like this. Basically how to control a sense of chaos or a scene of chaos. And they said they can't keep up with the demand. There are teachers from all over the country that want to learn how to do this kind of stuff. So there is interest amongst teachers to be able to arm themselves. Obviously, nobody wants teachers. They have to carry guns, but we live in a very different world than we did, as you said, when we were growing up. So is this something you would flatly oppose, or is this something that's worthy of consideration, or what?
Yeah, so in general, I don't think it's a good idea, and for a number of reasons, but not the least of which is that, having armed teachers in schools certainly changes the tenor of the classroom, right? And
I'd behave a lot better.
You and I probably would, right? But it's not what teachers signed up for, right? To be armed in front of kids. I mean, schools, when they work well, have a nurturing environment, especially at the younger grades. And so the idea of having a teacher who's brandishing a sidearm would be a little unsettling to a lot of parents, I think. In addition, it does, when you have a school full of armed teachers, it does pose the risk of things happening, right? So if the teacher, you can picture a teacher putting, a gun down on the desk because the teacher has to go into the closet to pick up some supplies or something like that.
But do you honestly think that a teacher's going to take his gun out and put it down on the desk in front of a bunch of students?
So most won't, but it doesn't. It only takes one, Barry.
We were talking about concealed carry, and we're not talking about all teachers that would have to do this. I mean, the old lady librarian is not going to be packing in her nylons. It's just
well, but why not, right?
What we're talking
by
about,
that logic, I mean, why not?
Well, what they're looking for, what's being discussed right now, are teachers who, I mean, we've been at war in Iraq and Afghanistan for 17, 18 years now. I mean, there's a lot of veterans that have come home that have had combat training or certainly arms training that are now teaching in schools and that would feel comfortable. That could pass a training. I mean, somebody would have to be somebody who would undergo rigorous training, want to do it in the first place, and would have the psychological. Kentucky just voted last night, a Kentucky community, and the teachers would have to be, I think, several times during the course of the year. You'd have to go through testing to make sure you're still competent to do this. So, I mean, again, we're not talking about just arming the librarian. We're talking about people who have the experience, that can pass the testing and everything else, that would want to do this. So it would be a very small number of people. But doesn't it give you a fighting chance if somebody does come in that's armed and currently we have a buzzer?
Yeah, of course, but there are other costs, right? So there's a risk that a gun would get in the hands of a child, right? So there's, as we discussed, there's there's an effect on the classroom, right? I mean,
do you think the kids showing up at school today that right now in a New Bedford school, do you think there's not a kid that has a gun on him or her?
There's, so I'm sorry, well, your question is, what is there?
Well, kids can carry guns into the schools now. There are no metal detectors. How do you know the kids in New Bedford High School, what percentage of kids in New Bedford High School might be packing right now?
Well,
let's hope it's a small percentage, right? But
yeah, so in the absence of metal detectors, you can't say that nobody in a public facility, a school or a mall or anywhere it doesn't have a weapon of sorts. We haven't had a gun taken off of any kid in New Bedford High School in a long time, and we haven't reached a point where metal detectors are necessary there. and unlike lots of other urban high schools around America. So I think until I hear from teachers that this is something they want in a big way, not just the ones who have experience with firearms and say, well, I'm fine with it, but also all of their colleagues, because schools are an intimate place, and people, and the best schools.
I know,
have
but
strong
people are dying in schools right now. Teachers are dying, having to put their bodies over students.
It's an awful thing, and there are other measures to be taken. So, like we have 3 armed, and just to use New Bedford High School, to stick with that example, we have 3 armed uniformed police officers in that school all the time, and that is a very strong preventive measure.
It's a huge piece of real estate.
It is, and
I remember having to walk from Gold House down to the gym.
Whew. Look, but I mean, that's having 3 police officers in one school is a significant presence. Like if you're somebody who wants to do this, you're probably going to go to another community, to some other high school, and do your thing. So
you wouldn't under any circumstances entertain the idea of arming teachers?
Until I hear teachers tell me, what, this is something we absolutely need in our school, then I mean, I just don't. I don't see. I see these other measures as being more important and without the downsides of arming teachers in classrooms.
All right, let me take a break. 508-996-0500 if you want to chat with the mayor. Now is a great time to do it because he's here ready to chat with you. 508-996-0500. We'll be right back after this. And welcome back. It's Midweek with the Mayor, a couple of hours later than normal, 30 minutes after 2 o'clock now on this Wednesday afternoon. And the Mayor's with us until 3 o'clock today. And so where else do we go? I got a whole pile of stuff here. Graduation rate continues to improve.
It does.
72% of folks are graduating that go through. Is that in 4 years?
Yeah, that's the 4-year graduation.
That's the 4-year graduation rate.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it looks a good thing. It's come a long way in the last few years, an awful long way. Mm-hmm. And we can all remember those discussions a few years back about the need to reduce the dropout rate, and it's certainly dropped. 72% is not nearly good enough. There's still work to do, but that's real progress. To go from, I think it was at one point, 55% not that long ago. Now it's 72. That is unqualified progress.
Standard Times had a story about a week or so ago, I guess, about teacher dropout, and we've talked about this before. Teacher dropout, I guess, teacher retirement, or teachers leaving.
Yeah, retention. Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess it's on the front page of the story here. It's all gloom and doom, but then you turn the page over, and I guess while a teacher and principal resignations are still pretty high, there has been evidence that it's slowing down somewhat. What are we doing to reverse that?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously we have right now there's going to be a change in leadership in the school department, and so it'll be left to the next superintendent to figure out how to attract more teachers and retain more teachers. But by and large, the retention rate hasn't, and the article points it out, it doesn't vary all that much from other urban districts around Massachusetts. And I think that's something to keep in mind. I think the turnover of principals has probably been a little bit higher than most places. And certainly the turnover of teachers is higher now than it has been historically in New Bedford. Every year, years ago it was only a handful of teachers, and now it's much more. So all that said, when you're in a reform effort, there is bound to be some turnover. I mean, we can all debate about whether it's too much or too little as part of a reform effort, but it is, the retention rate right now is in the ballpark of other urban districts around the state.
So this, this isn't all because teachers don't like the superintendent. I mean, this is something that we're seeing pretty much, which has been what the superintendent said when I've asked her about it. Yeah. It's not because they hate me, it's because this is happening everywhere in Massachusetts.
Yeah, I mean, so I think there are a variety of reasons. I think you see, there's probably been a drop nationally in the number of teachers that are, in it for 30 plus years, like my parents were. There's still those people who stick with it for that long, but not nearly the same percentage. And you have programs like Teach for America, which has a presence in New Bedford, where the deal is you're only here for a few years and you move on. And some of those folks stay, but most of them don't. Most of them get in it for 2 or 3 years or whatever the obligation is, and move on. So I think that's reflected in those trends. And yeah, I think there's there's in our district there's a higher level of accountability than there has of teacher performance than there has been historically, and I think that is in itself a good thing. And then I think there are, truth be told, I think there have been some folks who haven't accepted the reform effort or have had clashes with the superintendent and have moved on, and it's hard to know exactly how many that is, but by and large the retention rate, ideally, teaching as a business enterprise is one might say is inherently human capital intensive. It matters a whole lot that you have talented folks in front of a classroom of kids, that if you're trying to raise test scores and get kids to succeed, having the best possible teacher in front of those kids is so important. And so the challenge for any school district is attracting that talent, developing that talent, retaining that talent, and that is going to be the challenge of our next superintendent. And I think that's right at the top of the list.
Where are we in that whole process?
So the screening committee that the school committee appointed a couple of months back is just starting their interviews. The application deadline closed. They had a couple of interviews last night, I understand, and they're going to be interviewing people throughout this week. And my understanding is that it will be, the recommendations from the screening committee will be reported to the full school committee next week.
Next week. So we could have a superintendent technically or
possibly at some point in March.
At some point in March. Wow, okay. Well, I want you to put on your headphones. We'll get to the phones. 508-996-0500. We're going to start right over here. And you are up first with the mayor. Go ahead.
Well, any ordinary broad would be scared to talk to two guys like you, but...
I think you can handle it.
You're not ordinary.
Yeah.
I guess not. That, gosh, to go back to your, what you're saying about the schools, metal detectors are not going to pick up on a lot of stuff. So I think that's a big waste of money.
Not a good investment?
No.
Yeah, it definitely changes the tone in the schools. I mean, it's... look, you have to be very cognizant about what kids are up to. And
I sold knives and weapons on the side in my gift shop here as a after side shuffle, and you can have them made of stuff synthetic that are they're not going to show on detectors.
No, that's true. You probably know better than I.
And
I thought you were going to say you were selling knives and guns in school.
No, I was out of school at that point. But you'd go back to the George Heath situation. That was a knifing situation. But what stopped it was a good man with a gun.
Yeah, I mean, there's a public space. I mean, that's what's so, one of the things that's so troubling about all these shootings is that not just the tragedies in and of themselves, but the threat to our personal liberty. You should be able to go out like George Heath did to a pizza restaurant in the Taunton Galleria and sit down with your wife and have a nice dinner and not have have to deal with.
Yeah, and he's a hero. He saved that girl, that pregnant.
Yeah, he sure did. He sure
You're
did.
damn
But
right he did.
it's like it's awful. There was up in the Boston area. What was it? 1 or 2 days ago, there was a deranged man in the town library in the town of Winchester, Massachusetts, who just went up to a 77-year-old woman and stabbed her to death just out of the blue. It's an awful thing, and there's a copycat element, obviously, to each of these incidents, and
more people killed with knives than guns. Oh, by the way, on the snowflakes, I'd leave them up. It's going to cost you more to take them down and put them back up in the fall.
Well, as long as they don't melt.
There you go. Thanks, Deb. Appreciate it. All right. Take a break. Now we'll start the next topic. I wanted to ask you about the Morse. I guess they've begun having community meetings on what to do with the Morse to Steel property. And, boy, these talks have been going on forever.
A long time.
Yeah. So how involved, number one, are you in that? And number two, any preference as far as you can tell us that you would have for that property?
Well, I certainly want to take my cues from the neighborhood. It is a site. I mean, there are 2 sites. There's the site that's been cleaned, and then there's the other site to the east that is not as cleaned. And so, what we've been doing lately has been through Michelle Paul, who's our Director of Resilience and Environmental Stewardship, to get the state to pressure the owner to do a full cleanup. And there's been some talk about groundwater infiltration into the site and the possible migration of contamination. They need to give good answers for that. It's probably unlikely, but the neighborhood is entitled to good answers to those questions. And they need, it's Viacom. That's the owner through many successive corporate acquisitions that owns the site. We want them to get on the stick and get it done. The neighborhood is entitled to move on that site. What to do next, I think, is in part going to be determined by what the market will bear. There isn't, the housing market in that neighborhood is coming back, but it's coming back slowly. So, putting houses there, if that's permitted under the terms of the cleanup, may be difficult until such time as the market's firmed up enough. And as we've seen around the city, the housing prices are going up, inventory's coming off, vacancies are going down, and so I think overall for our housing market, it's a good thing, and there are some new homes being built in the north end at least. So, eventually we'll hope that there'll at least be, a greater market for housing there or something else like that would support the existing housing.
Well, lessons learned from the new Keith and that whole area and the neighborhood around there where they built houses and wound up having to rip them down and all of that. I mean, is this a brownfield? I would assume.
It is a brownfield.
Yeah, so I would assume that they can't do anything with housing there for a while, right?
Probably not. But
what types of uses are allowed under the brownfield rules?
Well, it depends. So when a site is cleaned up, there is usually what's called an AUL, an activity and use limitation. In some places, that means you can't put anything there. So, like Sullivan's Ledge, there's a good example. All we could do there is basically do what we did, which was to put solar panels there. In other places, on the other extreme, anything can go. The highest, when you're talking about residential redevelopment, it requires the highest level of cleanup, which means that it's more expensive. So, at that particular site, if what we can't get there is a very limited activity and use limitation that would allow for residential, then we probably would look at something like commercial, like small shops, and I think that's something that's been talked about before. But again, I want to make sure that we're doing right by the neighborhood, right by the people that have to live in the midst of whatever gets built there.
Any concern about seepage from that into the?
There has been some concern. That's what I was referring to before. That there's been concerns about groundwater getting in there and migration of contamination, and that's being tested. And we've insisted on a very thorough testing, and some of those results have come out negative. But I also want to make sure that the neighborhood's satisfied that a thorough job has been been done in that way, because it's an important question. Obviously.
So where is Viacom at this point? I mean, are they actively involved in all of this, or are they tough to?
Oh, it's just it's a level of frustration. It's frustrating for me. It's frustrating for the neighborhood, even more so, that things have not been cleaned up as quickly as they have. And part of the problem is that there are staffing issues with the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection, and forcing companies to hasten their cleanups. And we've been fortunate that as recently as earlier this month, Eversource has started to proceed with the cleanup of its site that's been there for contaminated and on a contaminated list of brownfields for a long time. That's good news. When we hope for the same at the Morse site, the former Morse site, and we'll continue to push DEP to force the polluter or the responsible party to take care of it.
But they haven't been very responsive at all, Viacom.
Not to my satisfaction, and certainly not the satisfaction of the neighborhood.
Is this another case where the federal delegation could help by putting some pressure down?
Maybe, yeah. I mean, it's been more of a state issue than a federal issue, but yeah, I'll be happy if anybody weighs in on it.
All right, let me take a break. 508-996-0500 will be back. Your chance to chat with the mayor for about another 10 minutes or so. Stay with us. You're listening to 1420 WBSM. All right, welcome back to the program, 508-996-0500. We're chatting with Mayor Mitchell. You may be saying, Barry, why are you chatting with Mayor Mitchell? Well, because...
now, at least.
Yeah, at this point during the day, because normally this happens at 12, but the mayor had something to do today, so he came in at 2 instead of at a 12 o'clock time slot. Last week you were off.
Yeah, we're totally thrown off the routine now, Barry. I'm not sure what to do with myself.
Did you drop in for lunch with Trump last week while you were down there?
No, actually, I didn't get that invitation.
Didn't get it? That one didn't get there, huh? Yeah. So you got a parking survey going on. You want to know what people think about parking?
I sure do. We talk about parking a lot in the city, and especially in the downtown, where parking has become harder to come by. The fact that it is harder to come by is a reflection of growth, right? It's more people are going there, and so. Some of the congestion in the downtown can be relieved by better parking management, greater usage of the garage, and the activation of certain spaces or certain lots around the downtown. And so, parking is parking plans can be very complicated. It's parking space is real estate, and not all real estate is worth the same. It's as it is with all other real estate. Location matters.
Yeah,
and so a lot of cities have gone to things like variable pricing. Right, if you're in the most desirable spot, you pay a little bit more. If you're in a less desirable spot, you pay a little bit less. It's questions like that are being entertained right now. It's not just the analysis focus is not just in the downtown, but also on the waterfront, where there's especially in the summertime a considerable amount of demand for parking because of the ferries and because of other things going on the waterfront. All good things to have, but we want to make sure that we're organized in a way that lets people get in and out readily, gives them access to the places they want to go. Downtown is affordable and predictable, and allows for more growth.
You mentioned the garage, and for years and years, long before you even arrived on the scene, the Elm Street garage is just not what people want to do.
Yeah.
I mean,
have you seen it recently?
I've seen just the outside, the facade.
Yeah, it looks
nice.
fabulous.
Been inside. Yeah.
Yeah, we have a.
But people have concerns about there were always homeless hanging in there and vagrants and the stench in the hallways and the
we're dealing with it.
The
though.
lighting and all that.
So
has it gotten better inside? Outside looks nice.
Yeah, well, there is a multi-year project underway right now to deal with all that, to deal with parking, to deal with security, to deal with the look of the place. The place is going to look totally different. I mean, it's already looking very different, and it's been, there's been sections that have been painted that hadn't been touched in decades. There's, a whole new entryway in there that'll have a nice, very presentable elevator and be, clean and neat. There's cladding, sort of an exterior treatment on the outside that people should take a look at if they drive up Elm Street. That makes it look a lot nicer. It's a very sort of Soviet-looking building, right? It's just concrete, right? Yeah, but
so you're colluding with the Russians.
Yes, it's me.
It's you.
Yes, yeah.
Gee, we caught you.
By building parking garages.
But the biggest thing is security. That's the thing that.
Yeah, the place is being wired with cameras and with automated arms and all sorts of new lighting. The place is going to be lit up a lot brighter. It's a big garage. It's an asset in the downtown for sure, and we want people to feel like they can park in there. They do park in there during the day, and not nearly as many as there should be, because it is right there, and as parking garages go, that's pretty affordable. But we want to make sure that we're.
Will there be security personnel there?
There will be a security arrangement, but with the camera network in there, it'll be a much tighter place than it's been in the past. Yeah.
Because that's the two things that I've always heard about the Elm Street garage. Why don't you park at the Elm Street garage? One is the security, and the other is I don't want to walk up that hill.
Yeah, so we can deal with the security issues.
Can't get rid of the hill, though, huh?
Can't get rid of the hill, and it's also a matter of changing habits. This is nothing unique to New Bedford. Parking, everybody would rather park on the street than in a parking garage. All else being equal, and what we're trying to do is, especially as we attempt to encourage residential development in the downtown, to get people to go over and park there. The Zeitirian garage is pretty full. It's a much smaller garage than the Elm Street garage. That's a nice one. That one's a little more inviting. It looks nicer. It's newer. It's smaller. But that one's pretty full. And so I think as the downtown continues to grow, we'll see more and more people going in both of them.
All right, 508-996-0500. Let's grab a call for the mayor, and thank you for hanging in there. You're next on WBSM.
Hi.
Hi.
This is Peg. I live in the north end, not far from the Alma Del Mar School.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to know, is that a charter school or is it a private school?
It's a charter school.
Who built the new school building? Did the city pay for it?
No.
Oh.
It was built by the. Strictly speaking, the board of the charter school. They raised money from a number of different sources, and they built the school.
Why did they put the front entrance on Belleville Ave? When school is out, traffic parking on both sides of the street and down the side street and everything, it's a mess down there. You come around, I don't know what time they get out of school, if it's 3 o'clock or what. Plus you have the businesses from farther north coming through. It's a mess coming through there. How did they ever allow that?
Well, so you'd have to ask them why they chose that. I think what they would say is that you had the Ottawell School there for a number of years, and they used the former Ottawell School initially. And when they went to build the new school, they built it on what in effect was the playground of the Ottawell School. Now they've knocked down the Ottawell School behind it, so and that's where the current playground is. So it's a long way of saying that was the part of the property that was available to build on. If there are parking issues there, none of that's come to my attention, but we can certainly look at that.
Have you ever driven by there when school's getting out? I agree with the call. It is a mess.
Is it a mess? Yeah.
I mean, you get all of these people that are just pouring right out into that busy street.
Yeah. So we'll bring that up with them. I wasn't aware of that. I mean, it doesn't surprise me that because it is a fairly dense area, right? Yeah. Obviously, Belleville has a busy street. We can certainly have them take a look at it.
It coincides with the businesses. As I said, farther north, they have a steady stream of cars coming through, or trying to come through, and it's really it really is a mess. I wish something could be done about it.
Yeah, we'll have them take a look at it, and if they have to line their buses up somewhere else, or
the buses aren't out in front. It's the people.
Yeah, the people. It's the people. I agree with 100% because I drive that way a lot.
People standing on the sidewalk.
People coming. You never know when kids are going to come running into the street. I mean, it's a very, very busy portion of the street in terms of traffic.
Okay, yeah.
And then there's a lot of human beings out there at that point of the day, especially when it's raining or the weather's bad.
Do they have a crossing guard out there?
No, not that I've seen.
So
I'm not sure.
I understand as a charter school, they're not part of the school district, so they don't answer to the school committee. But we can certainly call.
So narrow, you're lucky to get one car going. Getting one car going either way, it's difficult because they just cars everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I hear what you're saying. We'll
good call, ma'am.
We'll call them up and alert them to the problem.
All right, you're up next with the mayor on WBSM. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Hi.
Hey.
Hey, John. Been a while. Hey, question, John. To your knowledge right now, which schools in the city are part of the property surplus that are just sitting there doing nothing?
So there are, there are 1, 2, right? So there's Kempton, and now that the new Taylor is opened up, the old Taylor is a surplus school.
Is the city actively seeking out education institutions in the area, like colleges, junior colleges, to even just to rent or lease the space?
Oh, we'd love for more colleges to move to New Bedford, but I mean those are probably not spaces that they would be interested in. We're both looking at both of those spaces, Phil, for any number of purposes. So the Kempton School is could possibly.
Hold on, I wanted to hear the answer to the question. Go ahead.
So the Kempton School can house. We've looked at for different kinds of functions for some for nonprofits, for instance, that serve the school community. And the Taylor School just became vacant a few months ago, so that's there isn't. I'll just say there isn't a plan for that as yet.
Can we demolish and then open that up for tax purposes?
Well, you could, but it's a nice facility. It actually could be reused. It needs some work for sure. It's 120 years old almost, but it's certainly we'd like to preserve the building.
All right, let me grab another call. Appreciate it, my friend. You're up next on WBSM. Go ahead.
Yes, a question for Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
This is before things get any worse.
Mm-hmm.
They did a really nice job, the city did, when it comes to the walkways down the south end around the water.
Mm-hmm.
And I see a big problem is that we start already to walk, and we start to see a lot of people, irresponsible people, that take their dogs and they poop. And it's I figure that the problem now, it could get a lot worse as the weather gets better. I want you to look into that. And now, I'd like to ask you a question. If the city has a dog officer that could start maybe finding some of these irresponsible people that take their dogs and they don't pick up with the droppings that they do. And I think that the city did a really, really nice job. It looks nice. So
you make a great point. It's something that bothers me. I go up there a lot myself, and I see what the dogs leave behind, and I think, come on, really, you know, there are people who just don't care. We built those spaces because I felt very strongly that New Bedford should have something like that, should have something beautiful like that. And, you know, you guys go up there, with your family, Barry, and people need to be more respectful about it. The city made a major investment. It took a lot of work. It's something that, you know, we're very proud of. And look, I mean, we don't want to get to the point where we have to put a rule in place that says you can't, you know, dogs are prohibited. You can't bring your dog up here. People. I'd
rather have the dogs than the bikes. You know, you guys ride your bikes on it. Yeah, you put my life at risk up there. Is there signage up there for dog owners?
There isn't, but it's like, come on. There is. I think there is in one spot on the harbor side.
I took a great picture yesterday.
But why do you need a sign though, right? To tell people to do something commonsensical. If you're
I mean, you have them at the park. I was just going to say I took a picture of a sign at the park yesterday. I was up at Buttonwood Park, and there was a great sign, and it says, "Attention, dog guardians. Pick up after your dogs. Thank you. Attention, dogs. Grrr, bark. Woof. Good dog."
Right. There's that sign.
Yeah. So I mean,
we can put that. It's all good, but you know what? We can put signs up, but you know what? Do you really need a sign to?
No, you shouldn't have to.
Right. So, you know, I just hope it doesn't. I mean, the caller is absolutely right, and it's you know, for everyone who goes up there, everybody says it's beautiful, and then they come across what the dogs leave behind to think, oh, you know what? Why did you know? Can you just be a little more responsible? I hope it doesn't get to the point where we have to ban dogs, but you know, it may come to that if we can't curb the problem.
We're out of time.
Just like that.
Just like that.
And you're out of time. You're done with your show. 3 o'clock.
Pretty much. Yeah. Now I get to do my real job after this. I got to go write stuff. This is
much more fun.
Yeah, I like this part. I just get to sit and drink coffee and talk to people like you. I think this is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So, well, thanks for coming in. We'll see you at your regularly scheduled time next week.
Sounds good.
All right, next Wednesday. You were off. You know, this is kind of weird. You your absence coincided with the Olympics. So were you?
Was I watching the Olympics?
Were
I saw some.
Yeah. I watched a little bit. I got bored after a while, but the first week or so I enjoyed it. But we got to get out of here. News is next. Mayor, we'll see you next Wednesday.
Thanks, Barry.
See you tomorrow, everybody.